Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me today. It's a pleasure. I want to introduce to you today the team that we did a little adventure at the beginning of this year. So, there's two Millfield boys in here, Paddy, who is in Orchards, and then two other guys who they went to school together as well, so in Uppingham. I have chosen some ridiculous pictures of us here to show that we're all pretty light-hearted, and actually I have no idea how we managed to do this trip. So I'll introduce to you first Max Mossman. Max was the captain of our ship. He came up with the idea. He's always wanted to be in the army, but he had a knee injury and actually didn't pass the medical. He's done a white-collar boxing match, which he won. But yeah, he came up with the idea, led us away across the ocean. Secondly, we have Heck Turner. Heck was head of navigation, which kind of meant that he was speaking to our weatherman back in the UK, making sure that we knew where the weather was coming from, if the winds were coming from behind us, so that we were going across the right direction. Heck's done the Marathon des Sables, which is 6 marathons in 6 days, and he was the youngest person to do this at the point. So it was great to have him on board. And Paddy, he was in Orchards, like I said. He has also done the Marathon des Sables. He was head of communications on board, which kind of meant that he was speaking to our parents and family and friends in the UK, making sure that they knew we were safe, but also sending back videos and pictures to all of our followers on social media, because that was an important way of gaining the charity money that we ended up raising. And finally, myself. I was head of everything else, which kind of meant there wasn't a lot. But I ended up being head of safety, so I made sure that we were wearing our life jackets at the right points, but we always had to be strapped on board just in case a big wave would come in from the side and throw us off. Luckily, none of this happened, but there was one moment where Paddy hopped off to clean underneath the boat, and he hooked on to the wrong bit of the harness. And as he hopped off, this bit snapped off. And I could see Paddy drifting away off the side of the boat. And at some points, he would have just drifted away because the currents would have been strong. Luckily enough, he managed to swim back to the boat, and we pulled him back on. So my head of safety role did okay, but there were a few hairy moments. I've done a marine assault course and a couple of half marathons. So when I got asked to do this, it was just an opportunity that I couldn't refuse. So I've outlined the mission. Back in 2016, we had some friends who had rowed across the Atlantic, which kind of made us look into it. We wanted to do something that was completely different, though. So we toyed with a few ideas, from stand-up paddleboarding to kite surfing in a boat, but the most realistic and achievable, but still pretty ridiculous, was a pedalo. So we were trying to cross the Atlantic from the Canary Islands to Antigua in the Caribbean, which is 3,000 miles. This had never been done before, so we were going to aim to set 3 world records: the fastest, the youngest, and the only people to cross this part of the Atlantic in a pedalo. So in doing this, we were looking into kind of how we could raise some money and who we wanted to do it for. And we decided that we wanted to do it for mental health. The main reason was because it was something that we could see within our friendship groups, something that was quite close to our hearts, and something that we could have an immediate effect on. So we looked into the statistics of it, and it shocked us how much is happening in our country. So here are the statistics. Suicide is the biggest killer of men aged 18 to 35. 1 in 4 people will suffer from a mental health problem each year. Over 16 million people in the UK suffer from a mental illness. 75 of these young people with a mental health problem are not taking action at all. And more than half of young people feel embarrassed to talk about their mental health. And the worst, I think, is the average wait time for effective treatment is 10 years. So we chose the Charlie Waller Memorial Trust. Charlie was Charlie took his own life in 1997 at the age of 28. He was doing really well in life. He had great friends, a supportive family, a good job, and no one knew that he had depression. So his parents set up the charity in aid of him to make people aware of their sons, daughters, friends if they do have depression and get them to seek help before it's too late. So what they do is they equip young people to look after their mental well-being, to help people to recognize the signs of depression in themselves and others, and ensure expert and evidence advice is available to people. And they do this by doing talks and to young people. They do it by going into healthcare. They train GPs to make people aware of the signs of depression. And they also do talks in workplaces to employees and employers. So now I'll talk to you a little bit about how we got to the start line. With this boat, it had to be a proper ocean-ready boat, which obviously costs quite a lot of money. So we needed to get some sponsorship from some big investors. We approached some big companies, some banks, and at the beginning it seemed very hard to get people to take us seriously. Doing something that had never been done before, and it could have gone wrong. People don't want to be associated with that. So we got quite a few people laugh at us, and yeah, it just seemed a lot harder than we imagined. But we ended up getting a few different types of sponsors. Some would just front us with money. Some would give us, would buy specific things like a life raft or a life jacket. And some people would give us products that they make. So Henry Lloyd, as you can see, is our clothing sponsor, and we've got some food sponsors like snack bars, like from Trek and Bounce, and other companies as well. So in return for this, they would get their sponsor logo on our clothing and on our boat, in the hope that we would get into the public eye for positive reasons and not negative reasons like washing up on shore somewhere. And we did. We managed to get in some good media coverage. We got on ITV, BBC. Me and Paddy actually had to do an interview on Sky Sports the morning after we arrived, which I can tell you was pretty horrible considering the situation and the hangover that we had as well. So then fundraising. We were aiming to raise £200,000 for the Charlie Waller Memorial Trust. And it was quite an ambitious target, but with the money that was costing the boat, we had to make it a lot more than the cost of the boat. Otherwise, it would just look a bit silly. So £200,000 was our target, and we did it in a few different ways. Firstly, we did a crowdfunding campaign. So this was a 28-day campaign in August of 2017, and this was getting quite close to before we were setting off, 6 months, and we hadn't really raised any money. So it was difficult to get sponsorship as well. Anyway, we did this campaign. In return for your donation, you would get a T-shirt, Pedal the Pond T-shirt, a case of cider from Orchard Pig, or speakers from Orbit Sound for different amounts of money. And we had 365 supporters, and we managed to beat our target in 28 days, and we got £21,000. So this set us up for, when we spoke to sponsors from then on, they took us more seriously, and we had some money that we were putting towards a charity. Secondly, we threw a charity ball in London, in Embankment Gardens. As you can see there, it looks pretty amazing. We managed to put that together somehow as well. So our target for the night was to raise £70,000 from 650 guests. And we had a guy called Johnny Benjamin. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of him, but he's got like a campaign called Stranger on a Bridge. He came and spoke at our talk, and he pulled a few heartstrings. But basically what happened with him was he tried to take his own life by jumping off a bridge in Scotland. And a stranger came along and helped him down. And it was the first time that he felt that anyone actually cared. And so he set up this Facebook page to try and find this guy. And yeah, it's just an amazing story. And the help that he didn't get and now has got has made him completely better. So planning for this mentally, physically, and getting all the right equipment on board the boat took quite a long time. We started our training in 2016. But firstly, I'll talk to you a little bit about what we had ahead of us that we had to deal with. So we were going to be completely isolated out on the boat. We were in this 9-meter by 2-meter boat. We didn't have a safety boat at all. So if we were to get rescued, it could have taken up to 2 days, not really sure. But there was a boat that completed the race at the beginning of the year who they capsized, one of the cabin doors was left open and their boat started to sink. So they got into their life raft and they got collected in 2 hours, which is probably quicker than the AA. But, I mean, they had to jump up on this cargo ship and they were going in the direction of Antigua to get to their destination, but this cargo ship was going all the way down to the bottom of Brazil, and it took longer for them to go in this cargo ship than it would have done in their rowing boat. But other things were like, our nutrition had to be on point. We needed to make sure that we had enough energy to do 12 hours a day on the pedals. We would do 2 hours on, 2 hours off, and we had to know our boat inside out so that if any breakages happened, we could fix them, but also if we needed to get the medical kit out or something else, we knew exactly where it was. So this is the pedalo design. We used a company called Rannoch Adventure. They are the leading boat makers in ocean rowing. They are they enter about 13 to 20 boats in this race that happens with rowing each year. And when we spoke to Charlie, who's up there, he said that he would be able to convert their boat, one of their rowing boats, into a pedalo. So these boats are made out of carbon fiber. They're very light. They have air pockets, so they're really buoyant. And they have lots of little ones, so that even if it snaps in half, it won't sink. It needs to be slapped in like 6 or 7 times, which is pretty amazing. There was a boat that when they got rescued, they left the boat, and it was fully intact 3 months later, washed up ashore in America. So this gave us a lot of confidence. And then here, we started training, doing a couple of training sessions a week, doing some bike rounds around the southeast of England. And then we got a personal trainer called Gus Barton. He put together this training program. He'd actually done a row as well, so he was putting us through something that we felt confident enough in to do this. This is a video of us training together. We wanted to make sure that we were training as much as possible so that we knew each other's personalities inside out, so that we could deal with, if someone was getting wound up on the boat, we could learn how to deal with these situations. And I mean, we did have arguments, and it was mainly about stupid little reasons, like who was taking the nicer meal, who was eating all the good food. And it was kind of pathetic, but these things are always going to happen. And it's amazing that we still got on afterwards. So with the courses, we needed to make sure that we were seaworthy. We did this is a video of us on our sea survival course. It's an upside-down life raft, and we had to try and flip it over. You can see we're not that slick in a pool. Imagine what we'd be like out in the middle of the sea. So as the funds came late for the boat, so did the boat. And therefore, we had a date that our boat was being shipped out to the Canaries, which is the 11th of December. And we had one weekend before. So on the 4th of December, we set out in the freezing cold. Everything was looking great. We were picking up some really good speeds. And you can see here, the sunset was just amazing. But at 2 a.m. on the first night, we had a complete malfunction with the system. We had no power, and we were drifting into a shipping lane. We actually had to be rescued by the RNLI on the first trip that we went out on, which was really embarrassing. And actually, it caused a lot of worry within the team about the system. But it was something that we knew we just had to get on with. And now, looking back at it, it was just completely idiotic. We didn't tell our parents about it. We didn't tell our families or friends. In fact, my mum listened to another talk that we did recently, and it was the first time that she heard about the rescue, and she was not happy. So finally, I'll talk to you a little bit about the trip. So we set off on the 7th of January of this year, and saying goodbye to our parents and our friends back home, it was really emotional. Going out into the middle of the sea that just looked massive, and we had no idea what we were going to experience, what was going to happen, and if we were ever going to see any of these people again. But we had some strong northerly winds, which was good because it meant that we could go down to the trade winds, which would push us along. But within the first 3-4 hours of being out there, we started to experience some waves that we had never seen before. They were like 30, 40 foot, and we had to learn how to surf these waves. And it was amazing but scary at the same time. We picked it up pretty quickly, but we did have a few really hairy moments where it would come in from the side. It looked like it was going to completely take us over at one point. So the weather was something that we spoke about pretty much every day, one with the people back home, but also within the group. And this would change within an instant. Sometimes it would be completely flat, and that's actually not what we want. We wanted to have some waves in the right direction so that it would push us along. Completely flat meant that we were going like 0.5 miles an hour, which was just horrible knowing that you're not making any progress. We also experienced a 3-day storm, which was probably the hardest bit of the trip. The heaven doors literally just opened on us, and for 3 days, everything got wet, the cabins got soaked, it was difficult to sleep. You couldn't even speak to the other person because you couldn't hear them. Weren't allowed any music. It was pretty hard and not something that I don't miss. Here's a video of part of the storm. You see Paddy's hands there are going like prune-like when you've been in the bath for too long. And actually, you could literally start to peel off your hands. It wasn't nice. So the wildlife we were extremely lucky with. You hear about the rowers, they seeing 1 whale or 2 whales, and that being like the highlight of their trip. We were so lucky. We saw about 9 whales. We got to swim with a pod of dolphins, and they were literally jumping up around us. We've got an amazing video. Unfortunately, I don't have it here today, but it's on our Instagram. And there's like 3 dolphins jumping up, 4 or 5 meters out of the water. It was amazing. And we also saw 1 shark. Not sure what it was, but we definitely didn't go swimming at that point. So life on board the ship, or the boat, it was pretty repetitive. We kind of just knew that we had this job to do of getting from one point to the other. So it consisted of peddling, cooking, eating, and playing games with each other. We got some messages sent in each day from parents and friends, which were real pick-me-ups. We'd read them out together at a certain point of the day. We also had some music. We got gifted this seaworthy speaker, which wasn't. It broke within 5 days. So we lost our music, but we still had our headphones. But it was much better playing games and passing the time like that. We also had to jump in every 3 or 4 days because barnacles would form on the bottom of the boat. They'd literally just be about half a centimetre, but that would massively slow us down. So we hopped in. Here's a video of Heck doing so. And it wasn't easy. You had kind of like a car window cleaning thing to go underneath with and scoop them off. Here's some of the first couple of days. You can see by our towns, they're not that good.
Bit of a swell today.
So we all had our own highs and lows of the trip, and they were pretty simple stuff. Like spaghetti bolognese was one of the highlights. We had these kind of freeze-dried food. You'd add hot water and they'd expand. So they were nice and light, so it was good for that. I mean, one of the greatest things was we didn't really have much communication. We didn't have social media, and it was actually so nice. You got to think, you had the ocean noise around you. And the wildlife was definitely one of my highs. This is after the music had gone. We had to sing to each other to keep ourselves entertained. Not very good either. So also, some of the lows. Our system broke quite a few times. You can see the guys here having to fix it. This happened in the middle of the night a couple of times. The chains would snap, or something got caught in the propeller. We had lots of different issues. We were aiming to do this trip in 35 days. And at one point, we dropped our fastest propeller, and we ended up doing it in 40 days and 40 nights. Sounds a little bit biblical, and it kind of feels like a long time now, but then, it just felt like forever. It was horrible. Here's a video of Paddy just getting back into the cabin after the storm. As you can see, it doesn't look too well. So yeah, 40 days and 40 nights out at sea, and then the best part of all was when we arrived in Antigua. Our sponsors DHL met us there. We had about 150 people welcoming us in. When we left, we had about 1,000 followers on Instagram. When we arrived, we had over 3,000. So it just felt completely surreal, but it was one of the most magical things I've ever experienced. And then here is a video of us coming in. So overall, we managed to reach our target, and we raised £202,000. So yeah, they are coming up with some topics that we're going to focus on. They're actually doing one around the local area, so we'll keep you informed with where our money is going. But yeah, we managed to do it. We managed to complete the mission and also raise the money for the Charlie Waller Memorial Trust. So thank you very much for listening, and if anyone's got any questions, then please fire away. It would actually, the most we ever got would be about an hour and 45, because by the time you get off, eat your food, do what you need to do, get your clothes off, that would be about 10 minutes, and then the other side, you've got to get ready to get back out. So hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes sleep if you're really pushing it. So we got about 6-7 hours sleep a day for 12 hours exercise.
Would you do it again?
I'd do it again if I hadn't done it before, but I wouldn't do it twice in a lifetime. So I'd advise you guys to do it. I mean, if you want to go on a 40-day holiday, paid for by big companies, get a good tan, then it's great.
What did you miss the most?
Sorry?
What did you miss the most?
The sleep. I think, yeah, that was the hardest bit, was going to sleep after all this exercise and waking up not even appreciating or even remembering the sleep because you were so tired, and then getting out to do another 2 hours. So when we got in, that was having a 9-hour sleep was just amazing. All right.
Did you lose a lot of weight?
Yes, unfortunately, can't really tell now. It's gone back on quite quickly. But yeah, we lost 2 stone, and that we actually prepared for that. So we got into a body weight that was, we wouldn't fall ill if we lost 2 stone. But yeah, I think around 2.5 stone each.
How do you manage with like leg soreness?
We'd have to do a lot of stretching. Well, actually, we all had different methods. I just tried to get as much sleep as I could, whereas Heck would stretch for about 20 minutes after every shift. So I'd literally get in and do 2 minutes of stretching, whereas Heck would do 20 minutes. It's completely, but you never, the funniest thing actually was getting on land was the next day I thought that the muscles that I was using were going to be the stiffest, but my calves that I hadn't used for 40 days, they completely seized up after I'd walked on them for a bit. So your body is amazing what it can do and how it adapts. But yeah.
Yeah, on the basket.
We did when we went on the trip in the UK, but we did quite a lot of training in the Canary Islands before we went. We took a lot of seasick tablets and these kind of like magnetic things that you put behind your ear. And actually we were very lucky and we didn't get seasick. You do hear stories about some of the other boats that one person gets really seasick and they can't do anything. So they can't even get on the oars, which we're very lucky that nothing happened like that.
To think that you were sitting here only 8 years ago as an upper sixth, one of us, sets such a high standard to what we can achieve as pupils, and hopefully we'll be able to come back and make a similar talk in such a short space of time after. So thank you so much for such an inspiration.